As an artist, I think it's so important to highlight the trust and comfortability that a client feels when they work with us and how open discussions can really deepen the experience of getting tattooed. In this series, I explore and engage in honest and open conversations with my special guests through the therapeutic process of tattooing. Tattoos are more than just an art, it's a connection. Welcome to Tattoos and Tribulations. Hey guys, and welcome to Tattoos and Tribulations. Today I'm joined by my childhood best friend, Jephina, Barkie. We're going to be talking about something that's pretty serious, but definitely a conversation that needs to be had. We're going to be talking about anti-Black racism in Asian communities. Do you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
So speaking on anti-Black racism in Asian communities, I am Black and Asian, both. So I think this is a topic that hits home to me. And Bea is my childhood best friend. We did everything together. This is the second tat that she's done, and I trust her. So I think this is a perfect time for us to chop it up. We grew up in Scarborough, and there's so many Asians, and there's so many Black folk.
It's generally just like a conversation of education, and we want you guys to understand our perspectives growing up in those kinds of communities, especially as someone who, their entire family was biracial, surrounded by, I guess, the traditions and also the hardships that come with being biracial, having a Chinese background, but as well as a Black background.
And so let's break it down even further so they understand my Blackness and they understand my Asianness. My grandparents are Chinese from mainland China, and then they moved to Jamaica for business and then had their kids there, which one of them happens to be my mom. My mom was born and raised in Jamaica, so she's never been to China. She can't speak Chinese, so she's Jamaican, but obviously she looks visibly Chinese. And then my dad is a Black man, the craziest man probably you'll ever meet in your entire life, but he was born and raised in Guyana. I lived with my grandparents growing up. So I lived with these like Chinese old folk. Then my mom, who was like Chinese but Jamaican, and then we saw my dad often. These kind of conversations touch me because I can see both sides. Both sides of where people are coming from, but there's definitely times where I have to draw the line.
So what was it like having a Black father introduced into your Chinese home?
All old people, like 80 plus, they're racist. I know my grandparents were prejudice. They moved to Jamaica for business. They were around Black people. They had Black people, running their business with them side by side. They have Black friends. But when it came down to their daughter being with a Black man, that was definitely uncomfortable. Growing up and seeing some of the arguments, or seeing how there was a displacement of my dad because he was Black. They were disappointed that my mom chose this route. Throughout my childhood, I remember my grandparents being like, don't marry a Black guy, make sure you bring home, they call it a Tongan boy, a Chinese boy. From the good jump. From a young age, my grandparents put in their head date Chinese guys, wear your hair straight.
The relaxing of your hair was probably the most prominent thing that I remember. I wasn't really sure if that was a transitional moment for you, or if you even understood what that meant.
I mean, if you look at the media, right? Beyonce has straight hair, and all these Black women have straight hair. So it was a thing from a child. I always idolized it. I always wanted straight hair. So whatever it took, if I relaxed it, bun off my hair a few times. And maybe because they would be grandma would be like, oh, your hair looks so pretty when it's straight, keep it like that. Maybe subconsciously as a kid, I didn't even realize, but it aided to me wanting that ideal look.
I'd also like to mention that today Jephina is gonna get this beautiful little Chinese red pocket with her Popo and Gung Gung on it. Shout out to Popo and Gung Gung because they definitely helped raise me growing up too.
My grandma honestly said in her later years, I had a change of heart living with her, and my grandfather, I was that 9-year-old kid being don't say that I'm Black. We look visibly different, and Chinese people, especially if you don't speak the language and if you don't look Chinese, they will treat you different. Love my Chinese culture, but going to Yim Cha or Dim Sum with them every week, people always just looking at us who are these people? It was just easier to identify with being Black. Went to Chinese school, I hated every moment of it. And it was my dad that sent us there. Probably just because Black man with an Asian woman, he was down with the cause. I think it was one of those things, he knew the importance of learning a language, especially in Toronto.
Of course.
I thought he thought it would be beneficial for me and my sister to have known the language. I respect. But even in Chinese school, I remember my grandfather literally had to go to the school and page the teachers. What are you guys doing with them?
Because they knew that they were being disrespectful.
For sure. After he saw the class picture, he's like, why'd you put them to the side like that? It's almost they left a gap. If people wanted to crop us out, they could. That's crazy shit. It's ironic that my grandparents were always disappointed with my mom, but me and my sister lived with them our entire life.
And they loved you. You were their entire world.
The beauty in it is that they have these ideologies about black people. They really were strong on them, and then you have these two little black kids are basically your kids. So that had to make them change up a lot, right? So that was a really dope thing to see.
Completely like rewire their thinking about their prejudice against black people.
So
growing up Chinese and growing up black, did you ever feel that you were ashamed of being black? Did that fuel you to become more empowered as a black woman?
I felt more empowered to be black, 100%. And I was actually more shameful to be Chinese. I'll keep that 100% real. I'm proud to be Chinese. I'm proud to be a biracial person. The fact that like I saw racism at a young age, thankfully I was able to identify that and know that that was wrong.
Growing up as a Filipino in Scarborough, you experience a lot of diaspora, and not having a Filipino community that you can relate to, especially as a new immigrant, tend to gravitate towards what is known as like white culture or black culture and the stereotypes that surround those two statements. And I feel like growing up in Scarborough, I was very immersed in black culture or black appropriation, I guess I should say. Did you ever feel like I ever portrayed those certain things as we were growing up?
I think it's one of those things where if there was, it wasn't anything that we paid attention to. It wasn't anything that I paid attention to. Because at the end of the day, we were just best friends. It wasn't like we were using the N-word or slang. So growing up, no, I personally can't say that I have. Like, do you feel like you did? Like, what are some things like in your head where you're just like, maybe shouldn't have been like this or thought this way or said these things?
For example, I did go to camp that was predominantly black people, and you know, I was saying stuff like "nabi," and I was using them in regular conversation. To me at the time, that felt fine. But looking back on it, I feel horrible to think that I actually did offend someone in the process of doing so.
So what that immediately makes me think about is cancel culture.
Yes.
In social media, right? There are people who, example, are not black, who have grown up in hoods. And when they talk and see people see them online, they're just like, oh, they're doing too much. That's who you grew up around. But that doesn't go to say that you have to excuse everything. There's a line where you have to definitely cross where, like, okay, yeah, you might talk urban because you were around a lot of black folk, but that doesn't mean that you should be slinging the N-word around. Even a question is, oh, like, what does black sound like? Those are extremely articulate black people.
It puts a negative connotation on what black people are capable of.
We're gonna change the narrative. I wouldn't just attribute slang to the black community. That's just a thing that's in our urban hip-hop culture, which is predominantly dominated by black folks. So I can understand how that's misinterpreted and digested in the wrong way. So that's important that we brought that up. One thing I want people for sure to know is that if you talk like that, you grew up around all black folk and that's how you talk, you just gotta show up when it's time to show up. Grew up in Scarborough, being around a lot of Filipinos. I remember saying they're trying a little bit too hard to be black.
That puts an idea in your own head as a black person, like what is being black or what is acting black.
People say like wagwan, those type of like terminologies which are heavily influenced in Toronto. Those come from places of Caribbean culture, descent. Also, then there's my mom who's like Chinese, that's from Jamaica. People need to respect where the black community stands, what they have brought to the table. And if you're going to hang around black people, be part of like hip hop culture, you have to respect the people who have founded it. You can't respect that if you allow microaggressions to happen in your house or low-key behind doors. You know, if you're not educated enough and you don't have these kind of conversations, you think it's okay. Those things aren't okay. Just the other day, this girl, I won't call her name out, but she basically apologized for using the N-word publicly. She was like, but I'm gonna just keep it real. Like, I say behind closed doors with the people that I grew up with, because she grew up with like, you know, black people. She's like, my kids are black. And just a word out there, just because your kids are black doesn't mean you're black. That was just like the saddest shit ever. Like, we're just like, you're canceled. It's a no for me. How are you gonna apologize for saying it publicly, but not apologize for saying it
in general?
Like, what is the point of apologizing? I think it's that kind of like behavior that I would call out for sure from the Asian community, being someone who's both. If you want to adapt the culture and take on things and have black kids and, you know, oh, my man's black, like, so then you gotta be speaking up and use your privilege as a pivotal point to change a narrative. It doesn't mean that you are black. It doesn't mean you can speak for a black person or for the black experience, but you need to be an ally. I've worked with a lot of students, right? And I've had like, you know, 15-year-old white kid be like, I hate being white in today's society. Look what everything that white people have done. There's a lot of guilt when everything with George Floyd happened, and a lot of white folk were apologizing for being white. It's like, don't apologize for being white. Own your whiteness. You're white. Be proud of being white. I think a lot of people think the whole Black Lives Matter is offensive because, like, well, my life matters too. Of course it matters.
Yes, that's the thing though. Like, yes, your life matters, but the problem is that society doesn't view Black lives as something that matters. So until we make Black lives matter, all lives can't matter because Black lives are part of all lives, aren't they?
I think there's like a lot of pain in the Black community and a lot of things that haven't been rightfully amended to them. Yeah. We're always, I feel like rightfully so, trying to claim what is created by Black folks. The issue is for me when those kinds of people don't speak up on these matters, or if they speak up in the wrong narrative as if they are Black. It's like, no, you're not Black, but you, again, going back to the allies, speak as an ally.
To talk on the point of white guilt, I personally don't agree with white guilt. I think it's extremely selfish. You're changing the entire narrative of focusing on Black lives to then again make it about yourself and your whiteness. Speak on Asians who adopt hip-hop culture and then bring it into their own communities. They then spread that narrative that it's okay to portray this image of what a Black person is because that is what you've interpreted it as.
It's like everybody wants to be Black until it's time to be Black. Can Black people have a moment to big themselves up without being criticized? If you're not Black, you cannot understand the Black experience. As much as I love being Asian, I feel like I identify with the Black community in those kind of like civil roots because I think I visibly look more Black. I understand my privilege being a biracial woman. By no way can say that I experienced like a full Black experience. I have had job opportunities and I was always Black enough.
And you were just not Black enough to exist in spaces wherein they could play you off as if you weren't as Black as you could be.
Exactly. I was always like the token Black, and I was tolerable. I have privileges as it is, so can you imagine someone who's not Black at all? Understand you have a privilege. Don't let Black people speak on Black folk business.
When I was younger and I was pretty ignorant, honestly, I had said something to a Black friend of mine. He listened to a lot of like rock music and a lot of punk music. I said, oh, you listen to such white music? And he just said like, fuck you, like what is white music? And also what is Black music? You know, it took me aback, but it made me question, wait, what is my perception of Black music? That's really harmful because they attribute certain things to what a Black person is or what a white person is or what an Asian person is. And he said, you know, if I am waiting for a cab and there's a white guy standing beside me who listens to R&B and rap, chances are that cab is going to pick him up and it's never going to come for me. So that is the Black experience.
That's a really great way to have put it because society, meaning us, like people are the society, right? We have created these divides as to what is what. This is Asian, this is Black, this is whatever the case. That's where it goes wrong because you see how there's always a good representation of other people. For Black folk, it's always like the loud, angry Black woman or the Black guy who's a little less educated in movies. People don't know the history of, you know, Black excellence
and Black success.
They don't know those stories. No, this doesn't hurt nearly as much.
There's a club in the city and they have Asian night, but on Asian night they play hip hop. What is your opinion on that? Not that they're specifically just for Asians, but they are catered to that demographic. And when they start playing that kind of music, is it just for the enjoyment or do you think that's appropriating Black culture?
Personally speaking, I would say to say it's appropriating Black culture is a reach for me. A lot of those people in the crowd, being predominantly Asian, probably do have prejudice towards Black folks. But what they should be doing is paying homage to that. Does that bother you? Like as an Asian person, like that's something that you brought up.
I think it's fine to have Asian specific events as long as they're being inclusive to other cultures as well. I felt very uncomfortable that they were playing hip hop music and saying the N-word when you step that boundary into, putting it plainly, being racist in public spaces that are supposed to like celebrate and enrich your understanding of the culture. That is wrong.
Yeah, especially in our day and age where the education is there for you.
Yeah, we're in the age of information. Choosing not to educate yourself is ignorant.
I want people to definitely understand the difference of like respecting and appropriating. And there's a tasteful way to do that, and there's a distasteful way.
Yeah, feel nice.
Fun bow.
Fun bow.
Fun bow.
Fun bow.
Chinese and it's powerful.
Talking Black matters.
Yeah.
It's only within other people's capacity to understand up to a certain extent, and then it becomes the Black experience.
I actually had one of my boys who's Filipino say to me, when George Floyd was murdered. He's like, honestly, I had to hop off social media, not because of the lie. He's like, because people were like getting at me because of like my absence of saying anything. Like, just because I don't say anything online doesn't mean that I don't give a shit. If you like putting education out there, if you feel like, you know, saying your piece and you put it out there, good. But you're in no place to question somebody, well, what have you done?
With the aspect of like the benefit of the doubt, just because they're not portraying it online, why are you focusing so much on their social media presence when you should just be focusing on how you can be a better ally for yourself? I was also on that side. I was kind of like, oh, why aren't people spreading information and education about this? You know, that was toxic of me to assume that was the only way that you could be an ally. If people want to fight the good fight, they'll fucking show up and be there. And if they don't, that's none of my fucking business. But the least that I can do is educate people in how I can.
You gotta spot on when you can catch yourself and just like kind of reroute the way you think. I think that's the beauty in having conversations like this.
It's okay to admit that you were ignorant. It's okay to admit that you were wrong. Like, there's no shame in doing that. That's how you learn, and that's how you grow to be a better person. People just assume that there's like a specific way or a specific standard to be a better ally or to be a better person. As long as you know that this person is trying their best, who are you really to say that they aren't an ally?
Ally for life.
I'd like to thank Jephina for coming in and getting a piece from me. You can follow Jephina at JLueChe.
JLueChe. Holla.
The Park Car Conversation is streaming on all platforms, so please make sure that you guys check it out because Jephina has some very, very good content that you guys would be really interested in if you're interested in so as well.
If you've ever been parked up in a car having a deep conversation, that's what we do. That's what we capture. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you for this piece. It's beautiful. I'm looking at it in the mirror right now. It's beautiful. I love it.
Let's finish it up.
I love it.
All right. Thanks to my childhood best friend.
Like, what do you think you said so far that's translating?
Like when you call it like urban language and I call it black language, that's a connotation that I believe that that's black language, even though I understand that it's not. That it's like,
but I think that's great.
Okay.
I think that's great. Hopefully the camera gets this. It's not Bea, it's me. It's not you, it's me.
I'm gonna ask them on camera. It's great.